Jan Krist is a phenomenal artist. She's a force to be reckoned with, and I am so proud to call her my mentor. I met Jan while I was at my post-diagnosis artist residency in the mountains of Leavenworth, Washington, and she was part of my reintroduction to this new world of songwriting that I had already been familiar with, but I hadn't gotten that push. And she gently but very forcibly pushed me into it. One of the things I remember was after this little retreat that we had done during my residency was over, everyone else had left the campus and she was there waiting for her train and said, "Hey, let me listen to some of the stuff that you have been working on." And so I brought her down to my little studio and played her tracks, and one of the most meaningful and encouraging things she did was listen to the whole song without any comments, which was terrifying. And then when the song was over, she looked at me and said, "You need to have an album." And she was right. And I still need to have an album. I get to put out a second one really soon, and I'm looking forward to that. Today's recording, though, conversation, it occurred on the last day of our songwriters retreat that we do twice a year with a bunch of other songwriters, and it's really wonderful. And I snagged her for a quick podcast recording on the very last day. So I apologize for both of her and I's energy levels in this conversation. But we were both exhausted, but I think that's what makes this episode so raw and so real, because we were just not having any of the fluff and stuff. It was straight talk and real serious business, and I think you'll enjoy it. We talked about mentorship. We talked a lot about what it's like to be censored as an artist and how important it is to speak up with invincible truth, why we have a responsibility to make art as artists. And Jan even flipped the conversation back on me and asked me some rather important big questions, and I blushed. I blushed. You can hear it in my voice. I'm just like crawling out of my skin during that whole section. So I know you'll really, really enjoy this intimate conversation between a mentee and her mentor. I'd like you to get to know Jan Krist because she's amazing. Let's take a listen. You're listening to Bare Naked Bravery, a weekly podcast hosted by me, Emily Ann Peterson. As a singer-songwriter, author, teaching artist, and creative entrepreneur, I encounter some really fascinating stories. I'm on a mission to reveal the depth and width of bravery and its benefits to creatives like yourself. More than ever today, our world needs bravery, unique bravery, from everyone. This is the place where you find it. There is no script or censorship today because that's how these facets of bare naked bravery are in real life. So if you're listening with little ears nearby, please know that some episodes may contain mature language and subject matter. One of the easiest ways you can share bravery with the world is to send this episode to a friend or two. Send them an email, text, or tweet, tag them in one of my Instagram posts. My handle is Emily Ann Pete, or leave us a review on iTunes. It takes seconds and can be done from your phone right now. Again, we need more bravery in the world, so let's be brave together. Okay, so I wanted to have you on the podcast because I've talked a lot about how important it is to have mentorship as an artist and somebody to look up to, and you are definitely one of those people for me.
Thank you.
For a lot of reasons. But I'm curious if you have had mentors.
That's a really good question. Let me think about this. Because I don't really know that I have. And I think that part of why I am and do is because I didn't have people. I spent 20 years playing in clubs and doing other people's music and really, cutting my teeth in other people's songs and getting my guitar chops up. And especially when you're playing solo, you end up having to do that. But I spent 20 years in a marriage that was not good and where I was not really encouraged to pursue my own art. And so actually, I would say I had a friend named Paul Patton who started a place called the Trinity House Theater in Livonia, Michigan. And he was probably the first person who I really felt gave me some really good feedback on my work and on my writing, my singing and my writing. And I didn't always like what he had to say. He told me, Jan, people are not going to remember you for your voice. They're going to remember you for your writing. And I was like, oh no, I'm a vocalist. So I wasn't really thrilled with what he was saying there. But he also said things to me like it was my obligation to do the best art that I could do. And then the world around me was going to decide what happened to that art, whether it was for my own amusement or whether it was for my community or my state or my region or my country or the world. That would be decided elsewhere, but it was my responsibility to do my art. So I had Paul Patton and I had other musicians that I worked with. And then later on, I had examples, people who really were shining examples to me, like Christine Lavin, who is a singer-songwriter from New York. She really modeled to me just the generosity. When I met her, I was opening for the Ann Arbor Folk Festival, and it was the day after I had told my ex-husband that I wanted a divorce, and I was not in a good place with my head. And I got to the theater in a snowstorm and got to the rehearsals. And she heard me sing and she came and grabbed me by the arm and she was like, do you have a CD? Do you have something I can take with me? I need to take this with me. Can you sing vocals, background vocals? Can you do harmonies? And so at the end of the night, when we did one big song together, she grabbed me and made me stand right next to her so that she could hear whether or not I could do harmony. And that was an amazing thing because I was with her and Odetta and Lyle Lovett, Livingston Taylor, John Gorka, just a great crew of people standing on stage and singing that song. And I can't even tell you what song it was. But it was great to see that kind of generosity in other people, and it taught me to be generous. And then I worked with David Tamulevich in his office for 6 years. And
he was the booking agent, is that correct?
He's a booking agent and a singer-songwriter.
Yeah.
Part of Mustard's Retreat. And he helped to develop the careers of Ani DeFranco, Dar Williams, John Gorka, just a host of people.
I think, you're not the only mentor. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure.
But I, like you, have other colleagues who I look up to, and whether they know it or not, I am absorbing that generosity or the little crumbs that they leave on their trail of, hey, send out thank you notes after your house shows, or do these small little steps that make a big, big difference in your career. And I think it's really good to be a sponge in that regard rather than I don't know what's the opposite of a sponge.
A wall for people to bounce off of, I guess.
Yeah.
So David was the one who said, everybody thinks that there's one pie out there. And if you're generous to somebody else, you're going to lose part of your piece. He said, no, there's infinite pie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The pie can get bigger, which will make everyone's slices bigger too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this week, we're at the end of the week of the Songwriters Retreat at the Grunwald Guild. So we've spent all week long songwriting, and I'm tired, and I know you are.
Yeah.
But we've talked a lot about censorship this week, mainly because the first two lines of my song have some R-rated words, which is really strange for me because I was always the one in bands asking for us to take out words due to I want to give this CD to my grandma. And now I kind of don't care because of the the message is more important than the words, or the message is more important, and so I pick those words.
Well, and also I think what you've said, it's something that other people have said and continue to say, and terms that they continue to use. And I think that a lot of people don't really realize, maybe you're not friends with somebody who would say something like that.
Right.
But people are saying really horrible things. And I do feel like we kind of have to wake up and smell the coffee, because it's simmering out there, and there's a lot of hatred and a lot of really nasty language going on in our country.
Mm-hmm. Which is how I start the song, with 4 really derogatory terms that a group of people are called. What kind of censorship have you encountered through your career?
Well, my work mainly gets played on public radio, and the problem for public radio hosts is that by and large, they've been losing bandwidth. There's this group of Christians who listen in on public radio very suspiciously and report them every time there's a naughty word spoken on their program. And
your music is not explicitly Christian.
No.
Which I know, but
right.
Those that are listening on the radio might not know.
Right. So no, it's not. In a lot of ways, it comes from a Christian worldview, but it comes from a very liberal Christian worldview, from the side of social justice. Mm-hmm. And that's a big argument in the church right now. There's so much crap going on. But so as far as what I say in my music, I have used words in my music, but I always just put on my CD, radio-friendly picks, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah.
And I try to alert the troops if there's language that's going to be objectionable, because I don't want the DJs to lose their jobs or, yeah.
Of course. Or get hounded by the FCC for
right.
For you stating it like it is.
Right. But that's the thing about art, though, is that's the difference between, well, you would think that's the difference between being an artist and being a pop artist, but pop artists are putting all kinds of words in their stuff. I don't know. What are they bleeping it out on those radio stations? Mm-hmm. That's just weird.
Yeah. But I think, regardless of music, pop, how you productize your art, there's a level of censorship that is always there. And when you're putting something out, even as a visual artist, which you're a visual artist as well, you have a version of censorship, or your lens that you're looking through to create that art affects the art. And then the person looking at or receiving or listening to that art also has their own lens of censorship through which they are absorbing your work.
I feel like it's more important than ever that artists present what they have, the truth that they have. Truth is one of those words that gets you in trouble. Scientists like to say there's no such thing as truth. It's just perspective. From my perspective, the data says blah, blah. But artists and people involved in some sort of faith-based pursuit, we talk about truth. And I just feel like the reality that we're going through, again, the reality that we're in as a nation, we need to speak truth. Mm-hmm. And we need to have dialogue. And I know that's got to be respectful, but at the same time, we can't back down from the truth about what's going on.
But, oh man, it's scary to state the truth, your truth or someone else's truth. It's scary. And one of the things this week that I was struggling with, both out loud with the rest of the group and also more so internally, is like, who am I to state someone else's truth? And yet here I am with a stage that I get on regularly, and I have an opportunity to share someone else's truth that is not often shared. And I landed, obviously, because I finished the song, I landed with it is my duty to use my microphone in the best way that I can to share someone else's truth, even if it's just from my perspective. But holy Moses, it's tough.
Yeah. And it is really scary because even within families, as we were talking about, even within families, an exchange about politics and, right now, if you have members of your family who think differently than you do and you try to have an exchange of information with them, you're a little afraid that it could just completely blow up your entire relationship with that person.
How do you do that?
I do it. I do it carefully. And I feel like I've had to back off a little bit, It's really discouraging because what I find is that no matter what evidence I can present, none of it is trusted because it comes through a journalistic vehicle. And there are a group of people right now who don't trust any sort of journalistic evidence, which it's really, it's not just frustrating, it's dumbfounding and horrifying. That is just to weaponize trust.
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah.
It's scary because especially if you're or working within a medium that relies on some level of trust, like for us songwriters, we rely on a level of trust between the performer and the audience. But if that trust is not there, or if that trust is threatened, then it kind of pulls the rug out from underneath what we're saying and how we're presenting it to them.
Yeah. I remember during the lead up to the war in Iraq, I had written a couple of songs about that. I wrote Holy Wars and Politicians, and I wrote, I Was Playing Curious, which I had written when the first Gulf War happened, and played it at a club, and somebody came up to me and said, "You're going to lose half your audience. If you sing that song anymore, you're going to lose half your audience." And I thought, well, I guess I'm going to lose them,
And then that brings up a topic that we talk about a lot, is especially when you are in marketing or in business at all, like sometimes you want to lose the people that don't apply to your product or service or whatever. So like turning people away from you is actually a good thing in the realms of business, because then that means that the people that you want to work with are even more stoked because they know exactly how you're going to meet their needs and that it's going to be just tailored to them, just so. But as an artist who, is trying to make a living off of their art and off of their work, that's really tricky, because then that means that you have to have that faith that losing half your audience is, you're still going to be okay.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes you aren't.
Well, but there's a certain part of you that kind of goes, this is my art, and I really don't have anything in it. And if I can't be genuine, I can't make disingenuous art, because then I won't want to present it, So do I discourage myself, or do I just say, to a certain number of people, if you don't want to hear this, then I guess you're not going to want to come anymore.
If you're listening to this, then you are in the direct line of benefiting from my patrons. This podcast exists because I have the financial and holistic support from a small but mighty group of music lovers and podcast lovers. And if you like this podcast, then I invite you to join them, because becoming a patron of mine costs as little as $1 a month, and there are lots of goodies in store for you. All of my patrons get to request cover songs, they hear brand new songs of mine before they're released, and they get intimate updates on how my creative pursuits are going. It is an extreme honor to share so deeply with folks whose support is so enduring and encouraging. And you can learn more about becoming a patron and join the ranks by going to barenakedbravery.com/patron, Patron. And thank you in advance. It means the world to have people like you supporting work like this. If you were talking with somebody who is just starting out in their career, or even in the middle, but they felt at some point that they did not belong either within their family or within their industry or amongst their colleagues for some reason, what would you tell them?
I don't know that I'd want to tell them anything, actually.
That's so helpful, Jen.
I know everything is so convoluted these days, but all I can say is to any artist is exactly what people have told me, do your art, do it well, be good, and be true. And I would have to say you have to be true to yourself and you have to produce the art. I feel like there's almost a clarion call, if you want to put it that way, that I have something to share that comes directly out of who I am and all of the things that I have experienced and the way that I listen and the way that I see the world. And it really is my obligation and my privilege to be able to share that. And I don't want to share it in a haphazard way. I don't want to share bad art.
Yeah.
I want to be as good as I possibly can be. And hopefully by presenting something in a beautiful and logical way, some people's ears will be opened. And if not, then, oh well. Because I'll tell you, I used to be signed to a Christian record company. They put my stuff out. There were a lot of reasons why that didn't work out, and a lot of it because they were not honest and they were ripping off the artists that they were dealing with. But part of it, I went to breakfast with them. They had me come to Gospel Music Association one day and took me to breakfast, and they said, Jan, if you just say the word Jesus in your music some, we could all make a lot of money. And I was like, ooh. And my music has never been about evangelizing or anything like that. And the more interaction I've had with the evangelical church, the more angry I've become at the church. And I kind of feel like, I am still a person of faith, and I have a spiritual relationship with God. And I can't even go into one of those churches anymore. I haven't,
Yeah.
I haven't. And I feel like...
Well, speaking of censorship, there are a lot of churches, regardless of the denomination or even faith, that are censoring women specifically.
Totally. And it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was a magazine that called me the proto-Christian feminist. It's because I was probably one of the few women who would speak up and say, no. But I'm not counted in that camp. I was on the top 100 of all time in the CCM magazine's records, of the end of the year. They had their top 100 of all time. I was on that list, and then I wasn't. It's like I'm being erased in many ways from that. But it's that's fine by me. Yeah. I have a really hard time with fighting the same fight over and over again. And artistic freedom, one of the big things about all of that, in my way of looking at it, is that there's a total mistrust of mystery when it comes to the church. They don't have any trust in mystery, and you would think that they would, but no. Mm-hmm. So I have great respect for mystery. And I see that as being part of what artists tap into. Yeah. And I don't want somebody telling me that I have to diagram the stick figure that I draw. Make sure that nobody misunderstands anything. So I'm good with losing half my audience, actually. Yeah. I think that anybody who actually gets what I do will stick with me.
Yeah. I do this sometimes with the guests that we have on the show who I know personally and who they know me. What questions would you have for me? Flip the script a bit.
What's your plan?
Oh, gosh.
I know you make plans for other people.
Yeah, I do. I do have plans. They, the last time we were hanging out, we were on that little mini tour across Washington. And I was telling you that I was in the season of not making goals or plans.
Uh-huh.
And you were very concerned. I'm back in that. I'm at a 3-month increment of making plans right now. So that's good because I was in an absolute none. So maybe like next time I'll be in a year-long plan. No, right now my plan is to plant some roots, or at least put an anchor into Orcas Island and be there for 9 months. I have a plan to release cello yoga albums every quarter. We were talking about that earlier this week. I have a plan to release my next album within the year. How big of a release that is, I don't know. At this point, I'm just like, want to get it out there. Is that the kind of plan you're talking about?
Yeah.
Are you talking about like having kids and...
No. No, I don't even ask my kids about that. Yeah. No, I just wonder because you're so talented and
thank you.
Yeah. And the last time we were together, you didn't have a plan.
I don't think at that point I had just been so burned by making plans and having none of them work the way I wanted them to. And so now I've reframed how goals and plans work for me by like 3 months is something that I know that you can depend on. Because I think what I was doing was trying to map out goals and plans for a year, 2 years, and then not adjusting those plans as the current realities were changing. So I found myself just fighting against my constraints because they weren't going to get me to the goal that I had set a year out.
Well, I do like what I heard you saying about maybe starting a songwriter circle.
Yes.
And I think that that's a really good plan to stay on task with your writing.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one thing from this week alone specifically. I was reminded how much easier it would be to write songs if I was in a regular habit of writing in general. And I do like purge writing or like morning pages, but having even just a little task of writing, like take 5 minutes to write a limerick, would help my skills or sharpen my skills a lot.
Well, I also think that it's really valuable to have the input of other songwriters. If you get a chance to kind of workshop your songs with a couple other people on a regular basis who you trust and you like their ear, as long as it's people who you really trust.
And I've talked a lot about mastermind groups with the Bare Naked Bravery group, and which I have a couple mastermind groups that I'm already a part of. One is like a group of artists from all various mediums, and another group that's just podcasters. So I get to meet with them on a regular basis, and usually we're talking about like things in business related things. So I am looking forward to getting a songwriter specific group up and running because
I know the shame of all of this is that you have to make money. You have to make a living. You have to pay the bills.
I know, but I think if you've configured that out, then you get to spend your time and your day and your energy on making better art. So, that's part of the plan, is to like spend my energy on the stuff that makes me money so that I can spend my fun energy or my creative energy, not that the other stuff isn't fun, but my creative energy on getting really good. Getting really good. Okay, I'm going to flip it back to you because It feels weird to be interviewed.
I'm putting her on the spot. You should see her. She's like crawling inside her skin like, oh, no,
blushing.
Don't ask me that.
Oh, you would have asked me that too. I should have seen it coming.
I know. I can't help myself.
Last-ish question, because we've got things we get to do the rest of the day. What are you looking forward to? Which is kind of your question flipped right back at you.
Thanks. Thanks for that. Well, right now, we're trying to clean up. We have a studio. My husband, Alan Finkbeiner, and I have a studio. And we're trying to get 2 other people's projects out of our studio.
A recording studio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So we're mixing one person's CD at the end of this month, and then the other person's CD hopefully by September. And then I would like to do another solo CD. And then I'm also trying to pull a CD together with the band that I'm doing with Jim Beiser, Annie Capps, Rod Capps, and Alan Finkbeiner, which is Diamonds in the Rust. Because we're doing, I think that has a lot of potential for, especially in the folk realm, to do festivals and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Really good players and great harmonies.
What about ceramics?
Ceramics and art. I have finally got my studio up and running. And I have an idea for a piece that I want to do that will involve, it's a multimedia piece that'll involve fabric and ceramic. And I always get these images in my head, and, the engineering, figuring out the engineering to put all the pieces together gets a little bit crazy. But so I take that one piece at a time, except that I am trying to throw on the wheel on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis, just to stay in touch with that. Centering the clay. I know it sounds
it's
cliche, but it's cliche that, centering the clay, it is a meditation. It's not an easy meditation sometimes. If the clay is too dry, you're fighting with the clay and you're swearing at it and stuff like that. So it's not like, sweet, soft little meditation. It's more like,
It's literally and metaphorically dirty.
Yeah. So I've been doing
or
that.
messy, I should say.
Yeah, but I love it. And
we didn't talk about this very much, so we'll have to do a brief version and then have you back. You went back to school at an age that most people don't go back to school.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes I follow my own advice to my own detriment. But I went back to school and I got a degree in fine art with a concentration in ceramics. And I paint also. And I teach watercolor for the community arts education at the university where I went. And I have private students now. And so I'm quite busy with teaching. But all of that is contracted work. So, as a performing artist, that means that I can say, I can be there here. I won't be there then.
Yeah.
And that's, I feel like most of us as artists have to be part of the gig economy. I've been part of the gig economy for my entire life so that I could
especially when
do it.
When you're sewing together an income quilt with all these different squares.
Yes.
Which is something that I do and something that you do. And I know it's something that a lot of people do.
Yeah. One of the biggest pieces of my square is my husband.
Touche. Yeah. Good on you.
Yeah. He's the insurance piece.
Oh, this is great. Okay, we're going to have you back next time we do another songwriting retreat. We'll do this.
Okay.
And we'll have you ask the same question to me every single time.
Yeah, I'll say, and what are you doing? What is your plan?
And I'll laugh nervously.
Tell me what's in your future.
I am so glad I got to share that conversation with you. Seriously, Jan's wisdom, just life wisdom, but also songwriting wisdom and art wisdom has meant so much to me over the last several years. And sharing that with you is really special to me. So Thank you for listening. I really also want you to go check out her music, which is linked up in the show notes of this episode over at barenakedbravery.com. Today's brave takeaway is to simply jump into the Facebook group and tell us about your mentors. Do you have one? Do you wish you did? What have you learned from them? What do you hope to learn from them? We would love to hear all about that. So go ahead and pop into the Facebook group and make that happen. If you are not a member of the Facebook group, go ahead and download the Bare Naked Bravery bundle over at barenakedbravery.com, and you'll get a link to all of your free downloads and a link to the Facebook group. We would love to have you partake in the community vibe that's going on over there. It's really wonderful. It's warm and fuzzy and it feels good. That is our show for this week. Thank you for listening. Again, I've put all the links in the show notes for this episode, so go ahead and check that out. And if you're digging the music in today's episode, that's because it's brought to you by Lee Rosevere. And if you want to find out more about all the other artists, musicians, and other sponsors of the show, go to barenakedbravery.com and you can check out our library of resources. So with that, I'm looking forward to being with you next week. There are some really cool things we've got ready for you. So until then, I have one message for you. It's this: be yourself. Be vulnerable, be brave, because the world needs more of your bare naked bravery.